Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people. You know, I had a procedure yesterday at the hospital, and I took some liberties last night after I got back. I was on that medication. I thought I was able to do certain things that they said I should not do, but they were so easy under that medication. And boy, I paid for it dearly this morning. And I just, as I always do, ladies and gentlemen, can't think of ways that I seek to envision heaven, which is a satisfied life for myself and for all human beings on earth. And I had spent a lot of time thinking about what the complications are and why they don't exist. And I thought about white people and the role that white people play in the problems of this nation. And I was reminded that white people must really be scared to death when it comes down to black people. Yes, really, not all white people, but most of them, a great percentage of them are afraid to death when it comes down to black people. Let me justify it. You know, when I was a kid, I used to watch television. That was a long time ago, I think, when televisions first started coming out or something like that. And they would have these movies on television. And the one was called Tarzan, and they had another called Jungle Jim. You young people don't know anything about that. The old folks do. And it was a movie about white people and when they go over to Africa to do certain things, to just go a safari, or whether they were going over there to steal something or take something. And Tarzan, was the greatest out of all the white men in Africa or black people in Africa. Tarzan was the greatest one, the white man. And so this, as a kid, this is what it was drilling that into our heads, my head. And when it came down to the black people of Africa, they hair sticking all over their heads. They had bones in their ears and through their nose, and they walk around with what little sticks, calling themselves ready to fight, woo 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 woo, and all that old kind of crazy stuff. And they had built so much fear to anybody that just watched these pictures. You were afraid of African people. Now I know white people were, but I was a black person, and I was afraid of Africa. I was so afraid of Africa, it was pathetic. Absolutely. No, Africa, I don't want to ever have anything to do with Africa. This is a black man whose connection with life is supposed to be, in one way or another, to Africa. Now, that fear, just to show you, generated throughout my life greater and greater. Perhaps each year, even though I wasn't actually connected with Africa. But I went to school. I went through high school. I went to college. I majored in social science. I've done a lot of study and research. But even around my age of 60 years, I was still afraid of Africa. Never been to Africa. Never really got my mind free. Heard about Nelson Mandela, I think. Heard about other stuff. But Africa was still Africa to me, based upon what I learned as a child. And one day, one night, should I say, I had a dream. I was here again in my late 50s or early 60s, and was flying someplace. I don't recall where I was flying, but the plane crashed, and it crashed over in a part of Africa. And so when we were going down, the pilot indicated where we were, and it was a frightening situation. However, when the plane crashed, I survived. When I survived, I looked around trying to find a place to hide. And for some strange reason, the place where the plane landed at seemed to have been a field. I think maybe the field was something that I remembered as an American, the big open fields, cotton fields and bean fields and stuff like that. So I don't know what it was. It was just a field. And I saw a barn. So I crawled, making sure nothing saw me, no one saw me. I didn't see any people now, but I was just making sure nobody saw me. I crawled in that barn and I stayed in that barn several days, scared to come out, scared to peep out. But it was so quiet till I started to get curious about what was going on the outside. And so I started peeping, started stepping out, didn't see anything. And then I started, going away from the barn that which was my protection, and straying further and further and further and further away. And one day I got so far away, I saw buildings, big tall buildings, and I started seeing the same kinds of operations that I saw in America. I saw people walking around with suits and attache cases, and it blew my mind. It actually blew my mind to think that Africans were living just a greater life as people in America. And I'm thinking, all of my life, I never knew this. And I was afraid to death, even at that moment in my 60 years, that Africans might discover me. And I'm looking for the one with the bones in the ears and the bones in the nose with the grass skirts on. This was pathetic. You know what I'm talking about. And another expression of that, they used to have the cowboy pictures come on, John Wayne and all these guys, Randolph Scott, and they would how the West was won. And they used to, you know what they used to do to the natives, the Indians. We had the warrior Indian. They would fight to protect themselves, to protect their families, to protect their land. But these soldiers had the kind of armaments that the bow and arrow couldn't stand up against. Not only that, they had guns. When these natives had rocks and a piece of sharpened rock on the end of a stick, and it just didn't match up. To make a long story short, they took these Indians and they did the things to the Indians, but they programmed it in such a way that they were making the Indians look like savages, calling the Indians savages. The Indians were standing up for their rights, but to stand up for your right meant you were a savage. You were no good. And so I'm an American. So I'm thinking that I didn't know there was a difference between white people and me. As a kid, you don't know that. You know you don't deal with white people. You still deal with black people, but you're an American, so you are an American. That's what you're thinking. And so when they were chasing the Indians and killing them and stuff like this, as a child, you were being taught that these soldiers, these white people, these Americans are killing these Indians so that Americans can have land, so Americans can have a place to stay. So I'm against the Indians because the system was against the Indians. I'm against the Indians because had the Indians not moved, perhaps we didn't have a place to stay. I didn't realize we were living on plantations and didn't have any rights. I didn't know anything about that. But it was being drilled into us, drilled into me, drilled into all of us as black people. And so whether you know it or not, it took us a long time to strip us, to strip that type of craziology from us. Well, think about that. For those of you who are old, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I want you to flip the script and think about white people. White people, all their lives. See, at least when I got to be 60 years old, I got an experience that brought me around from the fear of Africans. When I realized that I was a slave, we were descendants of slaves, then I realized those Indians didn't give up their land for us. And all this stuff coming to me, and I'm thinking, white people been told the biggest lies you can ever imagine about people, about not just black people, but all people. They've been told the biggest lies that could ever be told about white people. White people were the greatest. They were the most special. They were lifted up as God-like. Even in the Bible, they put Jesus' picture in there to remind people, if you got a problem with it, look here and see who the godly people are. And then everything that they told about black people, I'm sure affected them just like I was affected about the African people. I'm sure it affected them just like I was affected by the story of the natives. Those white people were crazy. They were driven crazy. They were taught crazy. And that's why they were able to put up with slaves. That's why they were able to have a civil war, to do anything to keep other people down, because they had a major fear of black people, a fear that's with them today, a fear that still, even today, keeps them asleep and will not allow them to be awakened, what they call woke. So they are in bondage right now, in bondage in America. We can't live happily, can't turn around and enjoy the life that all of us want because we are so afraid based upon our early indoctrination. So I say, ladies and gentlemen, we just have to realize that white people are afraid as they can possibly be of us. So we got to make some way to let people know, and let white people especially know, that they're going to put that fear aside, because whatever fear that they have is going to have to be overridden. Just like it took me to have a plane crash in Africa, even though it was in a dream, before I woke up. Even though I had to ride in my father's car down in Mississippi on the floor seat of a car as we were passing through an Indian village because of that fear. But my eyes were open and I'm woke. And so white people just gonna have to wake up, because the world that they see trying to carry it on is nothing but a world of destruction. So to all of my people that hear my voice, I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you that the most important things to me includes peace, prosperity, freedom, joy, and happiness, and to live my dreams. That's what's important to me. I think it's important to all of you. I might be wrong, but that's what I think. I want my needs, my wants, and my desires met when I want them, when I need them, when I desire them. And that includes but not limited to food, clothing, shelter, education, health care, transportation, infrastructure, and anything that's made at the hands of man. I should have access to any of these things. And since I should, I believe every human being should. And what makes it possible that I could see things like this? Well, I recognize that all of the resources that have been available to do all the things that humankind have always done have been given to us freely. They were here with the earth. And everything that we plan to do in the future, the resources are here. Some of it is seen, some of it is not. It's on the earth, above the earth, in the earth. But it's here. And everybody on earth benefits from something on the earth. So that tells me that everybody who comes to the earth brings something with them that they can contribute, something they can engage, perhaps in a career that they love, that would help create and cause a manifestation of these goods and services to such a degree that not one human being would have to ever suffer a lack of anything. That's what I'm calling living heavenly. That's what I'm calling having a satisfied life. Now, that's what I seek. And since I seek it like that, I just think it's a good way for all people to live, especially when all of this stuff can be accomplished. You don't need money. You don't need to go into debt. You don't need to have any loans. The only thing you do is be you. You don't have to lie, cheat, steal, hate, be a racist, a bigot, go terrorize, or go into war. You don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. So to me, my wokeness brought me to this point where I really honestly have heard only of maybe a handful of people who got to that point in their lives. Now, I'm not telling anybody to be like this. I'm only saying that if you practice certain principles, you can have exactly what you're trying to get. You can't lie your way through it. It won't work. You can't do any of those things. It'll only make it worse. You got to be real. And so when you lie to me as a child about Africa, about the natives, when you spend a whole lifetime lying to white people, you were doing nothing but creating hell on earth. And to try to straighten it up seems to be a major job. But I told the Lord, and what is the Lord? The Lord is the power of all existence. That when I was put under to go through this procedure, they didn't have to bring me out. I mean, that was a good, sweet way. Not having to go through cancer, not having to go through this disease or this sickness. I just been gone. But if you had, my work was unfinished, if you wanted me to do more, then bring me back, and I'll continue to do what I've been doing, which this message that I give to you today is a part of that. And I want to thank those of you who decided to listen. For whatever benefit you get, that's on you. I've done exactly what I came back here to do, is to share my truth with you. Until next time, Eddie Marcus say goodbye for now.